The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Coaching Youth Hoops Podcast.
They're playing basketball. Basketball.
Here's our hosts, Steve Collins. And Bill Flitter.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coaching Youth Hoops. Coach Bill has taken over. As you can see by my goatee here, I'm on a little bit of a break. But before we jump into the podcast, I want to make sure you go over and check out coachingyouthhoops.com, the one-stop shop for anything you need as a youth basketball coach. Practice plans, handouts, videos, you name it. It's all there. It's a one-stop shop. It's basketball coaching in a box. And prices are going to be going up this fall. So if you're thinking of coaching your son's or daughter's team, coachingyouthhoops.com is the answer. Go over and check it out. And if you're part of a youth organization, let us know. We can take care of your whole youth organization too. But go over and check it out, coachingyouthhoops.com, and let's head off to the podcast.
Hello, coaches, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I am your host today, Coach Bill Flitter, and we have a special guest today. We have a 17-year coaching veteran, high school coaching as well as youth coaching. He coached his daughter up to sixth grade. Former player at Santa Rosa Junior College. Sol, welcome to the podcast. We're happy to have you today. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Bill. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've listened to almost every episode. I've learned a lot of things listening to previous guests.
So you're that one listener we have. I appreciate you. Thank you. I thought it was my mom. My mom doesn't even listen to the podcast.
No, Bill, you do a great job. I'm really honored to be invited and speak a little bit on basketball.
Well, and we're going to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is practice planning. It is, I look at it, it's an art. And you really, as a coach, especially as a youth coach, you really have to balance between, as we're going to talk about, skill development and game development and what you're going to do in your game. You know, as a youth coach, you know, players don't have the skills like they do when you're coaching high school. And even then, right, you still have to strike that balance. So let's just dive right into the topic. And maybe what, if you could, let's start this way. So let's start from the top. Like, tell me what your thoughts are on, at a high level, this, like a practice plan at the youth level would look like. And then we'll dive into that and go a little bit deeper. I mean, because you see these kids at the high school level, right? And you're like, okay, if I developed I'm rambling here, but if I developed a practice plan for every youth coach, this is what it might look like so they're ready for high school.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great topic. It's really near and dear to my heart. First, I think I should start off by saying I've been a classroom teacher for over 20 years. And I think this is important to mention because I've learned so much in the classroom as a teacher. And I think it transfers very well to the basketball court and coaching. I've been teaching at an at-risk school. Basically, it's a second chance high school, continuation high school. And I mention this because in order to reach this particular population, I mean, you got to have a really good classroom management. And I think having great classroom management transfers extremely well to having good court management or practice management. And I think I've taken a lot of these skills and these experiences onto the basketball court as a coach. I think it's helped me tremendously. So, we as coaches, I think we have a great responsibility, and that's skill building. I think most of us will agree that basketball is very hard. Basketball is also extremely fun, and it could be even more fun when you have these skills. So, there's no greater joy in my life than knowing that I could be a big part in building important lifelong basketball skills. I've experienced that as a classroom teacher, whether it's teaching fractions, decibels, and percents, or, now it's on the court, building stamina, strength, competitiveness, dribbling, shooting, and so on. So, some of these challenges that coaches have on the youth level, right? They have limited time. Most of these coaches might only have 1 hour per week many times. They might only get a half court. These are kids that are coming there for the first time or who have limited skills. You might not even have any assistant coaches. Parents are going to be there watching the entire time. So it's, it could be a daunting task, and but it doesn't have to be. And I think it all starts with, like in everything, it starts with preparation. So when I'm talking about preparation, what are you thinking about to prepare for that maybe 1 hour practice?
Yeah.
So some of these things, and I'm going to go over these, maybe each one. I'm going to talk about the dreaded cones that, from previous podcasts, there's a lot of haters of the cones. And I'm going to say, don't be a hater of the cones. We're going to talk about using a clock or a timer, music, bringing basketballs, transitional cues, circle ups, and just the overall practice plan. So, I think those are like the main things in my mind of preparing for a good practice.
And let me stop you right there, because I want to touch upon this, because you're not the first person who said this. And I hear it a lot from Steve, the other co-host of the podcast. He's also a teacher, and he talks that being a teacher has really helped him on the court. If you could maybe like pinpoint, because obviously not all youth coaches, right? They're parents, they have other types of jobs. But what do you think the one skill is that teachers possess that if I'm a youth coach that maybe I could go out and learn or enhance?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Maybe I'll say too. I mean, relationship building is huge as a teacher. Right. Building that relationship with your students and with your players. And then the second one is listening. So, and I'm not really sure which is first or which is second in that rank. One of the things that I've learned also over the years is I've learned to be an effective communicator, or, I'm not an expert at any, but I'm definitely getting better. Where, my first few years of teaching, I'm just talking and talking and talking and rambling. And now my words are more concise and they have more meaning and they're more effective. So, that's one of the themes here of this podcast today, is just, trying to use less words, or in these words that you're using, they're purposeful, they're meaningful. You're not having some 10-minute diatribe on, why we're doing the shell defensive drill. And it's the same thing in the classroom, whether, when I'm teaching my math class, I'm trying to use just less talk, more effective words, and have that class, that lesson be more effective, more, and just moving more.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you ever want to be an effective coach and use less words, do a podcast and then listen back to every episode of yourself talking. That will definitely change your vocabulary and how much you talk.
That's funny.
Well, yeah, let's dive into that then. So I love the fact that you brought up the cones and some of these other things, and that's the thing with basketball. And I always tell my students, and especially parents, there's 101 ways to coach this game. And, the things that you do and I do might be completely different. And the way we teach it might be completely different. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're right, I'm right. It doesn't mean you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's just, of course, there's those fundamental things. And there's some things I bet I could get you going on that you would never change. And it's like every coach should be doing this. And I'm the same way. But this game is so complex. So anyway, let's dive into a few of those items that you brought up.
Yeah, sure. So, just organizing your practice plan. I think before you get there, make sure you know who your players are. Make sure you know their names. I mean, that's part of the first step of relationship building. People want to be called by their names. It's not, hey, you guys, like, hey, kid, or whatever. Really get to know their names. And that's gonna go a long way. But let's just go right into, for example, the cones. Okay, so I've said don't hate the cones. I think you should definitely have cones and bring multicolored cones. And you could use these cones, for example, for placeholders. I mean, the younger the kids are, they need to know where to go. And it's just like in my classroom. Everything is organized. All the kids, it's your routine and your procedures. It's like that first week of school as a teacher. You got to teach these kids, where are you going to turn in your homework? Where do the books go? Where are you sitting? So using these multicolored cones. So it could be like, hey, Jenna, Aaliyah, Stacy, go line up behind the blue cone, right?
Yeah.
You could use these for boundaries if you're playing some small space games. Or, you might just need some cones for boundaries so the kids all know where the boundaries are. Of course, you're using these drills or these cones for drills, whether it's creative dribbling drills, and you're using these for hand-eye coordination. You could use the cones where if you're dribbling with your left hand and you tell them to dribble to the blue cone, when you get to the blue cone, keep your dribble and then flip the cone with your right hand, make it touch, flip it back and go back in line. This is helping your hand-eye coordination. It's building reflexes, dexterity, coordination, and athleticism. So, I just think the cones are good for many creative uses. I also use the cones. And let me ask you this, Bill, when you go to a practice, do you ever go to a practice? It might be even your own. I mean, sometimes this happens in my practice and the balls are just scattered everywhere. Have you seen that before?
It absolutely drives me crazy. I actually stop practice and say, kids, go put the balls where they belong. We have a specific space. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that drives me crazy too. Now, I was very lucky this past season, when I was coaching at College Park. We had a team manager, and the team manager, one of his responsibilities was making sure the balls are on the rack. Now, in a youth practice, I use the cones, and I have separate cones that form a circle. And when it's time to put the balls, away, I like, all right, put the balls in the circle. And as I do this, and this will transition nicely to my clock and countdown timer, all right, 10, 9, 8, and, I'll do a little countdown. And it's amazing how kids respond to timers.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
So before I get into the timers part, I just think it's important that you also have a place to where are the balls going to go? Where is their resting place? Whether it's on the first row of the bleachers, whether you actually have a ball rack, or if you just create a circle space within cones. And that's my preference. But you can choose what's right for you.
No, that is actually, especially at the younger levels, that is a great suggestion. And they can just place it there because a lot of times they'll throw it against the wall and they throw it too hard, rolls back into the court, and you're just wasting time. Here you got the circle, go and drop them in the circle, come back. But you're absolutely right. I got to tell you something I did last night with my youth, speaking of time. So I wasn't quite sure if they were running hard enough, right? And we have these couple drills. And I said, okay, everybody in line up. And I had them do one down and back. And I just wanted to see how when the first person got back, okay, how long it took them for a down and back. I was actually pretty surprised. They were pretty good. These are 7th and 8th grade girls. They got back, and the first person got back in less than 10 seconds. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So then I said, okay, I think you guys are holding back on me. I have $100 bill. I'll give everybody $100 if you get back under 9 seconds. Okay. Wow. I wanted to see if they could do it down and back in 9 seconds. I was sweating it. I'm telling you, at the last. The fastest person got back in 9.7 seconds.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, why did I have to offer you $100, right, to get down, right, to down and back? So we're talking about effort, but what that number in their head of 10 seconds is a game changer, right? Like they were so excited that they even hit 10. And now they were trying to beat it. And, we do a lot of time drills as well. Everything in my practice is timed down to, even water breaks, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's a good segue to what I want to mention too. So it sounds like, in your own practice plans, you're doing that. I think it's very effective. Talking about the timer, as a teacher, oh my goodness, I have a timer. I time everything, whether it's, and, I chunk my lesson plan. So it might, if I have a 45-minute math class, I'm chunking them in maybe 15 or 20-minute segments. And I have timers for different things.
Interesting. Right in the classroom. So you have a timer in your classroom.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I don't think I've ever seen that or heard anyone say that they do that. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And it's, well, in the classroom, it's really easy. But let's keep this to basketball. So, but also I just want to tell you the importance also around my own house. I use timers with my own kids. And, I have one child who's ADHD-ish. So, and these are good timers. It's organizational. Right. Yeah. It gives them these cues. Okay, we're leaving in 5 minutes. I might go, Amazon or Alexa, whatever, set a 5-minute timer. Right. And we know that it's time to go. So on the basketball court, if you are lucky enough to have some kind of the digital clock, if you don't have a digital clock that you're working with, maybe, you have your phone and you have a timer, or if you just use your voice, right? That's plenty good enough. So like you were just saying, transitional times, if it's water break, all right, guys, balls on the rack, quick water. And then, you could start counting from 10 and they get a quick water. And the next transition is, all right, then line up around the 3-point line. And it's, more times than not, they're always there within those 10 seconds using the timer. Right. And this is helping you keep an effective, efficient practice, right? We don't want to waste these kids' times. You are there to build skills and you don't want to waste any time. So using a timer is super important.
Let's talk about that though. And I think one of the bigger, this comes up all the time and I hear this, which is that they're not getting it, Sol, within the 10 minutes I allotted. Right. And and I'm guilty as any other coach. What do? You continue.
You continue.
The worst thing you could do. So dive into that a little bit,
Well, I part of it is feel, right? Like you have your practice plan, and I have my practice plan for high school, and just as an example, maybe I'm spending 10 or 15 minutes on dribble handoffs or something like that, and after 10 minutes, maybe they don't all get it yet, but you know what? I'm going to move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. I am, and then my next practice, I'll build on it. We'll spend more time on that. On the dribble handoffs. So I think in a youth basketball setting, if you're if you're working on something, I don't think you should really, I think you do need to move on. I think you need to move on to the next drill or your next concept. And, it's going to be messy and some kids aren't going to be experts at it, but I still think that's okay. We're going to hit up, hopefully we made some progress within those 10 minutes or whatever time was allotted for. And now you're going to move on and maybe we'll hit that back up the next practice. And part of this also, these transitional cues, also back to having an effective practice plan. Maybe you bring a whistle. Maybe you have a 3 claps type of thing. Maybe one of these cues is balls on the rack. It's the timing. So I think everyone should also, in their bag of tricks as a coach, have transitional cues. And I think, I learned this from observing elementary school teachers. They are, in my opinion, the best teachers in the world. The way that they could corral 25, 30 elementary school kids using these transitional cues is quite amazing. And so I picked some of this up in coaching youth kids myself. I like to use 3 claps. I like to use maybe, 1 whistle or 2 whistles. And then that might mean something where we're transitioning or they stop. So I think every coach should have some transitional cues like that.
Can you give an example, like a real concrete example of that?
Yeah.
So clear.
So when we're, what I like to do is, another thing, what I'll do is, 1, 2, 3, and then eyes on me. I think a lot of us have heard that before. If we're in a small circle and we're giving props out to someone, let's give 3 claps to Jenna, and everyone gives 3 claps. If I blow the whistle twice, that might mean everyone hold the ball, or, I've taught kids that you're going to tuck your ball in your right hand. And that just stops, I might have a quick teaching moment and then we're back to that drill.
Yeah.
So those are 3 examples.
Smart. Yeah, no, those are great ideas. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
So the other thing that I put on here is music. Mm-hmm. And if you have a portable boombox, and I do this in my own high school practices, music really kind of became a game changer for me, believe it or not. And I first learned this a few years ago. I went out and I visited a San Diego State practice.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrenta a sus rivales, enfrenta a tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre a la para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
And I just could not believe that Coach Dutcher, Brian Dutcher, he had music on the entire practice. Even as he's coaching and teaching, there's music in the background. It was kind of driving me crazy, but the kids loved it.
Yeah.
It brought a certain energy. Now, have an appropriate music list, of course. But what I think is also important to get that engagement and relationship building, you can get 1 or 2 songs from your players, request, and the next time you might have that list out for them. And, now they feel heard, they feel listened to. It's another form of showing that you care.
Yeah.
But just having some music, I think it helps keep practice fun and energized.
I couldn't agree more. It's hard for me now not to practice without music. And even the kids are saying that. And we usually play the music when I'm talking. The music goes off. I usually run it off of my phone so I can just stop it if I need to say something. During drills, we're doing it. But we just found that. Well, I should also say this, because I think this is something kind of a carrot, which is I tell them, if I don't see energy and effort, you're listening to my playlist, right? Right. So if I see energy and effort, or I'll reward somebody and say, hey, whatever, Annika, hey, it's your playlist day tomorrow. So be prepared. Send me your playlist of songs. I love the way you did X, and we have these awards things that we do, Red Dot Awards and stuff. We little things we triggers that we have. But yeah, anyway, the one though that they just absolutely hate. Coaches get to play his music, so I mean they actually respond to that, right?
Yeah, no, it's really funny. In my own high school practices, I mean, sometimes in the beginning of practice before the kids are there and I'm setting up, I got my 80s playlist out there, and I might forget to change the playlist. So I mean, these kids are getting a great history lesson in 80s music right now.
Yeah. Well, I had one girl the other day that she said, "Oh, it reminds me of being on vacation." And because I have the 80s playlist going too, so I know what her mom and dad listen to, right, when they're on vacation, is the 80s soundtrack.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's funny. But music's great. Yeah. You'll see the kids, they're jamming to the music while they're in their little drill lines or whatever. And it's fun.
Light, right?
Yeah.
Because it's intense already, right? But this just, play more of a playful mood in a good way, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things as coaches that we're trying to do, especially on the youth level, right? We want these kids to have fun. We want them to be interested in like basketball. There was an article that came out in, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal a few months ago, and there's so many kids now that are leaving basketball for other sports.
Yeah.
Particularly they're leaving mostly for volleyball. And I'm not gonna, I know volleyball is a great sport itself. And I'm sure we could all philosophize or have a conversation of why people are going to volleyball. Yeah. But we want kids to really enjoy this game that we love. So, the last thing I'll say in the organizational part and the preparation of a practice plan are the basketballs themselves. Ideally, we want to make sure that we have basketballs for every player out there. Now, if that is not a reality because of budgets or whatever it is, maybe, I'll ask kids to bring their own basketball, make sure their name is on it. But ideally, it'd be great if we have at least one basketball for everybody. Better yet, sometimes it's nice to have two basketballs. If for those who like to do two ball dribbling, to help with their hand-eye coordination and their ball handling skills. And just as like another prop, especially when it comes to the ball handling skills, I like to bring a set of tennis balls. I'm sure that we've all done ball handling drills with the tennis ball. And, I know there's some coaches out here that probably just hate that, but on the youth level, I think it's important to build these skills, and it's the hand-eye coordination. I understand that you're not teaching someone, doesn't really transfer and trying to beat someone off the dribble with a tennis ball. But, just for the prep work and the skill development, I think these particular creative drills are fun. They're challenging, and it's a nice piece in adding to your practice plan.
I used tennis balls last night, part of the practice, dribbling. And I think of the other thing that those types of drills, yes, it doesn't, you're not carrying a tennis ball in your pocket when you're on the court. Okay. But you know what it does? Watch their faces light up when they can do it. That creates confidence. We want confident players, because then it's like, oh yeah, it might be small thing that they achieved, but man, now they think, oh, I got that. What else could I do? Right? Could I do whatever 3 times in a row versus just the 2 that I did? Right? So they start challenging themselves. Or I'll say, oh my gosh, you did 2 in a row. Hey, try 3.
Right.
And they'll try 3. They never think they could do it. Right. So I think it's that especially with the kids, it just, it's the confidence building piece that brings as well.
Yeah, super important. Building the confidence, building that self-esteem, and you're progressing. And if we want to stay on this tennis ball drill a bit, maybe for the coaches that are listening here, I think, and Bill, you can maybe tell me your progression. And the progression I like to use with kids is, if they're dribbling with their right hand, they have a tennis ball in their left hand. And I'm just telling them, as they're dribbling their right hand, they're throwing the tennis ball up with their left hand. And like you said, maybe the goal is 1 in a row, 2 in a row, 3 in a row, and so on. And then, maybe it's just for 20 seconds, and then we rotate. And then after that, it could be dribbling the basketball and the tennis ball at the same time, or in alternating patterns. After that, it could be a partner and a ball. And now you're dribbling the basketball with one hand, and your partner is bouncing the tennis ball to you, or rolling it, or throwing up in the air in different challenging manners. And then the last part of the progression that I like to do is, now we're moving. So the person with the tennis ball is walking backwards as the person with the basketball is walking forward, and they're having that catch with the tennis ball as they're dribbling. And then the probably the last part of that then is now dribbling backwards. So we're doing the same thing backwards. Dribbling backwards is an important skill, and it's something that all kids need to have. They need to know how to dribble backwards.
Very similar progression. The only change is I do it the opposite way to start. You drop the tennis ball, and then you got 1 crossover, and you got to catch it, right? Then we progress to 2 crossovers, and then 3. I find most high school kids can do 3 at the youth level. A really good dribbler last night did 3 in a row, so she's already at that higher level. But most can definitely, they work their way up to 2. And then we do combination dribbles off of that. So cross between behind catch, right? So we're working on coordination. We're working on speed. And I think the tennis ball drop, what that does, it tells the players, I have to be able to dribble quicker, right? And it can't just be this slow, crossover. Ball's going to get stolen, right? So that's like, coaches said, dribble faster, dribble harder. Well, what's harder and faster? Well, now you're working with gravity with the tennis ball. So just one little thing that I found that worked too.
Yeah. And I think that is great. And that's definitely next level stuff. And that just, I don't want to get off on too much of the tangent about the ball handling, but the force of the dribble is so key, right? And that's what you're talking about. Eventually, you got to be really pounding that ball, and it's got to have some force on it for the quickness. And I think you're doing it the right way. So I think that's great, Bill. Going back to, again, the practice plan, and for the youth coaches here that are practicing, a few things when we were talking about the drills itself. You never want to see long lines, like, those Disney-like weight lines, right? We want more reps and less standing around. So, who knows? Maybe you got a bunch of kids, or, I've definitely seen practices with youth coaches, and all 15 kids are in one line, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting for that one rep. And, at the end of the 1 hour practice, did they really get good training? Did they really get solid reps? So I think everyone needs to be thinking about that. How can you split up these groups? How can you get, and even if you're just solo coach by yourself, it's really important that we minimize wait time and we get more reps going.
And what I did, and why I do this periodically and probably need to do it more often, is last night I brought in, so I coach a girls team. I brought in 2 high school girls, and very different skill set. One is a post player, the other one is a shooting guard. And we did stations last night at practice for the first hour. Obviously, the post player was working on post move with the girls, right? And then the shooter was working on shooting form, and I've trained her so she knows verbatim everything I say, right? And then I was working on ball handling, and then we would just rotate. We did 15-minute stations from one, and they loved it. The high school girls loved it because they're giving back. The younger kids loved it because it's like, oh, wow, that could be me someday, right? And so they're big sisters to these young ladies, and then you're really creating a community. And I bet you can find one or two high school students that would be happy to help, even during the season if practices don't overlap, right? You don't always need to have an assistant coach or a parent, right? There's other resources available.
Yeah, and you bring up resources, and basically it's like developing your own coaching skills and pedigree. So I think this is I actually was planning on talking about this too today, and I think that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. No matter what level of coach you are or what experience you have, basically, if you're listening to this podcast right now, that probably means that you really care.
Yeah.
You enjoy coaching, and you want to help our youth become better basketball players. So with that said, and what you just mentioned, it's so easy, at least I think it's easy, to find, like you said, basketball players from local high schools to come volunteer, do a drill with you. If these practices are only an hour, also, selfishly, the incentive for some of these high school kids, they can put this on their resume, right? As they're applying for college. Yeah. Hey, I was an assistant coach for Coach Flitter, for his basketball team. But, they're great role models. The young kids look up to them, and they're great assistants, and they will help you within your own practice plan. And I think speaking of just getting better at your own craft, some things that I wrote down that I think is important is, go out and volunteer in your kids' classrooms. Observe the best teachers that your kids have.
Good point.
You will learn. I guarantee you will learn something that you'll be able to bring back onto the court. You'll get great teaching methods. Another one, ask to watch your local high school or college practices.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met a coach that said no.
Mm-hmm.
They will allow you into their practices. You can ask questions, come bring a notepad and take notes. Over the past several years myself, I think that there's been no other high school coach in this area that have seen more St. Mary's practices than Sol Henik. Okay. I think if Randy Bennett allowed me to run his practice, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to run it.
I'm surprised he lets you in.
Well, why would you say that?
I don't know. I'm just like, he's, with Randy's, I always thought his practices were closed. And I guess what we didn't tell the listeners, Saul and I live in the same area and actually coached at the same high school, not at the same time, different time. I was at De La Salle as well. And that's a really good point. That's how I started. I coached my son's third grade CYO team, and I was a player, but I never coached, right? There's a big difference there. So I would call up Frank Alaco at De La Salle and say, hey, can I come observe? Yes. Again, same thing with you. I could run his practices because I was just, I literally had a notebook. I actually found the notebook that I kept with all the notes that when I would show up to his practices. And eventually he's like, you want to coach here? And then that's how I started coaching high school basketball. I'm like, absolutely. Started with the freshman team there. So, and anyway, yes. Yeah. I think that's a thing about coaches in general is we want to educate. That's what we do. Right. And we're happy to share what we've learned. And you just look at online too, of all the resources and, coaches doing videos of their offenses and defenses. Right.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, this is why, I listen to your podcast, and I've definitely learned a lot from your podcast as well. So I appreciate you, putting this on. Even when you go on vacation, and let me tell you this, my wife is from Albuquerque, and anytime we visit Albuquerque, I call up the UNM coach. The last time I was there, Paul Weir was the coach. I know he's not the coach there anymore, but I just called up randomly their assistant coach. Hey, I'm a local, or I'm a high school coach. I'd love to sit in on a practice. And they just opened up the doors to me, and I sat there for an hour and watched practice and take notes. I did the same thing at San Diego State under Brian Ducher. We went to San Diego for vacation.
Great idea.
I had one of my players is fortunate enough, he plays currently at Colorado College. It's a D3 school in Colorado Springs. And I watched his practice. It was Jeff Connerow. While I was there, I went to Air Force and I watched Joe Scott's practice. I've been to Georgia and watched Tom Crean run a practice. Holy Cross with Bill Carmody. I've been to a De La Salle football practice, and learning from other sports as well, I think is super important if you want to build on your craft. Even club soccer teams. I mean, it's amazing. Some of these soccer teams, they run tremendous practices, and if you're just watching and observing, you will pick up some great nuggets on just how to run an effective practice. That's a really great suggestion. I'm headed to Wisconsin, so I'm gonna to visit my family. So I'm gonna look up a few coaches when I'm back there and see if I can jump into a practice or two. I never thought about that for the college level. I just thought, they're not going to waste their time on a high school coach and open up. Well, if you think about it, there's a lot of incentive to invite you. I mean, especially assistant coaches, they're just salivating at the remote chance that you might have a player for them. So if you build those relationships, and that's what they're trying to do, they're trying to build relationships and connections. So, and again, I've never been told no. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up with a few questions. So this has been great. We could probably talk about 2 hours or more on practice planning, because it is definitely a skill that you need to learn to maximize the time that you have. But what is, you're designing practice plans for all the youth coaches in our area. What is the one skill that is going to be on every practice plan? If you can only do one thing, what would you tell coaches?
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, it's got to be two. It's got to be shooting. So shooting form and the reps of the shooting, and it's got to be dribbling. It's got to be ball handling and dribbling. So those are the two that I'm going to incorporate. And of course, it's real easy to incorporate both of those skills in drills. I know you've had previous guests that are experts at shooting form, and I know you're one of them themselves. So I'll invite those listeners to listen to those previous podcasts with Doc Shepler. I know he is an expert at shooting, so I'll leave that to him. But I'm sure we all have similar, form shooting drills that we do. And then, of course, just the ball handling. As I watch our youth get better and better, and then we see them on the high school level, it's those players that can handle the ball that seem to be, the more successful players. Even the ones that can't shoot as well as others, if you could handle that ball and get yourself into an offense, if you can handle that ball and get by your defender and get to the rack, they seem to be just more successful than others.
No, that's great. I switched all my training probably in this order. I used to do a mix of all different types of skills, but now I start with, everybody's going to master shooting. And what it really boiled down to is how do parents and how do kids score a game? How many points did you have? Right. It's the first thing, not how many stops you had, how many people you blew by with your dribbling moves. Right. I'm like, okay, so let's give them that. Let's give them the gift of shooting. Right. And obviously you and I know they need to develop those other skills as well. And you can create your own shots if you have a good dribble, right, and get open and all that. But you know what, man, if they could just start at the youth level with great shooting psychologically and building their confidence, it'll keep them playing. And then you say, hey, you want to be a better shooter? Oh, you need to be a better dribbler, ball handler, right? So then we work on those skills next. So it's kind of the order of things. All right, you've been to a lot of youth practices. What is the one drill you would just tell every coach not to do anymore? Put you on the spot here.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
That you see a lot, right? There's always those standard drills.
Yeah, I think, I do think the 3-man weave still has a place in today's practices. I just don't think that youth coaches do the 3-man weave correctly or as efficient as they should. I mean, even on my high school level, we do a 3-man weave, and it's mostly it's part conditioning, and it's also for proper passing form and coming to jump stops. So all I would say is for that, I think that if you are going to use and do a 3-man weave, I want you to just think about how you're doing it. Is it effective, or is it a waste of time? The second thing I would definitely just get rid of is those fake stretching circles. If you start your practice out with stretching, or I don't know what people do in their circles, I would get rid of it. And I don't know, maybe I'll get some hate mail or some hate tweets after this, but I think it's a waste of time. When you got kids that young, they're already so limber. They either tell them to come early and do your stretching. No need to do it and waste time of your precious 1 hour practice.
So I have a 1 hour practice. Break it down for me. Maybe in percentages, what it would look like. How should I think about my practice? I'm a youth coach. 1 hour,
so
1 hour a week, or 1 hour, maybe twice a week, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So if I'm chunking that out, the very first thing, we're going to get in a little circle. We're going to just kind of just go over, make sure we know everybody's names real quick.
Yep.
If it's their first practice, just kind of lay down some quick expectations, get one in. And then we're going to go straight into some dribbling drills, whether it's stationary or moving or combination. So there's going to be a percentage of dribbling. Then we're going to go into form shooting. We're going to actually do some shooting games. And before that also, we're going to do some dribbling games, whether it's dribble tag or dribble Pac-Man. And of course, we're talking youth level here.
Yeah.
After that, there could be some, I'm going to do some passing drills, and, just getting the proper form of passing, maybe passing on the move, stationary passing. We're working on all sorts of different passing, one-handed, chest pass, bounce pass, on the move passes. And then we're going to get into maybe a conceptual type of drill, whether it's just a a pass and cut drill or a pass and screen away or an on-ball screen. And, there's going to be a small percentage on defense, proper defensive stance, depending on the level. We can talk about help side type of defense. And then we're going to give them dessert. And dessert is actual playing, whether it's 3-on-3, 4-on-4, if you're playing 5-on-5. And this is all, it's going to be progressive depending on the age appropriateness and the skill level.
Yeah. No, that's, yep. So the majority of your practice with the youth is skill development, and then some conceptual things on offense and probably some defense in there as well, and then play. Right. Yeah,
100%. I mean, even at my high school level, if I have a 2-hour practice, the first 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour, is still skill development.
Yeah, we do about an hour. I have a 2-hour practice with the 6th and 7th and 8th grade girls, and we go an hour or 45 minutes to an hour just on shooting and ball handling. We combine those two. I have a bunch of different drills that we, getting lots of shots up with a ball. Everybody's got a ball in their hand, right?
Yep.
All timed, right? There's nothing like they have some sort of constraint on it. It's a time constraint or a number of makes, or they're competing against everybody else on the court, right? Some sort of constraint that puts that pressure, game-like pressure on them, right? So they just feel it a little bit because, as you know, I can shoot against the NBA player from just standing in the corner, right? And he's got to close out on me. But as soon as I put that ball on the ground, he's going the other way with it, right? Yeah. So, or whatever, I'm going to miss it. Anyway, that's good. Any final words, any last minute words of advice before we sign off today, Coach?
I mean, I'll just say, Bill, I'm really appreciative of having this time and opportunity to speak to everybody on your podcast. I think podcasts like yours is very important for all youth coaches or coaches in general to listen to. I think you can pick up something from this podcast and others that will help with your craft. I mean, I just think that we have a great responsibility, and this is fun. Basketball is fun, and it's so great to help our youth out to build these skills so they'll enjoy this great game that we all love.
Coach, I really appreciate your time. And if there is one thing that you wanted coaches to hear today, what is that message? And then we're out.
Well, it's fun. Keep it fun.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, even at my level, one of our pillars is just playing with fun and playing with joy.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, Coach, till next time. I did forget, if coaches want to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
Well, they could definitely reach me. If you want to get me through Twitter, I'm at Sol Henik, SOLHENIK. Otherwise, you could just, you can contact me at Sol Henik or Sol Henik at yahoo.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Coach. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you, and good luck this season.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you. Take care.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.